so much. I love you so much. I love you so much. I love you so much.
Hello, all you positive heads out there. Thanks for tuning your beautiful brainwaves into another episode of the Positive Head Podcast, where we are firmly convinced that creating success and happiness is rooted in understanding the ultimate nature of reality and the fact that as human beings, we are all immensely powerful fractals of the one and only source consciousness which creates and animates all things. After years of exploring this awe-inspiring truth on this podcast, I'm super excited to announce that we are now going even deeper down the rabbit hole on the new late-night style consciousness-elevating talk show called Optimistic, which features none other than you, the listeners. Optimistic is taped out of the epic spaceship-esque 8-bedroom property we call the Mystic Manor that myself and the rest of the Optimistic crew now navigate reality from in Venice Beach, California. And you are invited to come experience a Mystic Manor immersion week with us. During your week-long stay, you'll enjoy unique workshops, chef-prepared meals, one-on-one time coaching and consulting with me, and even co-creating magic with me as a guest on both Optimistic and an episode of the Positive Head podcast. When I started this, my aim with these immersive retreats was to facilitate the ultimate spiritual upgrade and tune-up, so to speak, for our guests while providing them with one of the most memorable experiences of their lives. And I'm happy to say that as of this recording, every guest at the end of their trip so far has told me that they have had a profound and transformational experience at the Mystic Manor and that they definitely want to come back. All that being said, we only have a limited number of spots available between now and next July. And as of this recording, about half of those spots are already filled. So if there's any part of you that is screaming, yes, I want to come, I feel like I need to be there, go now and book a slot with me to discuss how we can put our heads together and make it happen at calendly.com/talkwithbrandon. I know for some people, there is also that little voice in their head saying, why not? I can't get off work. I can't afford it, and on and on and on. But, really Henry Ford, I think, said it best. Whether you think you can or think you can't, you're right. And I'm confident that where there's a will, there's a way. And I'm personally committed to doing everything in my power, including discounts and payment plans, to get you here if it is something that truly feels like a huge yes for you energetically and like you're meant to be here. Once again, the link to book time to discuss with me is calendly.com/talkwithbrandon. That's spelled calendly.com/talkwithbrandon. All one word, of course. And book in some time and look forward to seeing you soon here at the Mystic Manor.
Hello, all you positive heads. On this week's P-Head Posse episode, our guest is Positive Head listener Ashley Miers. Ashley is an actress, singer-songwriter, Kundalini yoga instructor, a speaker, and a health and nutrition coach. She has appeared in national commercials for 76, Chuck E. Cheese, and Reddi-wip, among other brands, released 2 original albums and several EPs, and licensed songs to ABC Family and Abercrombie & Fitch stores. She has also spoken and performed on the UCLA campus and twice at the Mental Health America conference about her experience overcoming cutting and extreme suicidal depression. Drawing on her education in neuroscience, Ashley was able to become medication-free over the course of her healing journey and now helps other women learn to love themselves and their lives through her online group coaching program, Transcend the Turbulence. Ashley lives in Los Angeles with her husband, John, her 1-year-old son, Isaac, and their 2 cats, Indy and Tiger Lily. Hi, Ashley. Welcome to the show.
Hi, Alexa. Thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, me too. It sounds like you've had quite a journey, like dabbling in all kinds of things. I'm really excited to hear more about it. And actually, like, that's a great place to start with really like your background, your story, what your life has been like, maybe growing up and getting to this point.
I'll just kind of brush over growing up quickly. I grew up in Nebraska, but I feel like my story sort of really starts with college. So I went to college at the University of Denver, and I got a double major, double minor there. My majors were psychology with an emphasis in neuroscience and philosophy, and then I minored in biology and communication. So after college, I moved out to Los Angeles. And my first sort of project that I started trying to work on was to create a project called The Power of the Mind, Understanding Consciousness, where I wanted to teach and share about everything I had learned in college. So I learned Vedic meditation right after I moved to Los Angeles. So I interviewed my meditation teacher, Tom Knowles. And then I also actually interviewed Bruce Lipton, who wrote The Biology of Belief. So that was like a really fun and amazing, like I was able to connect with these influential thinkers, and I wasn't really experienced enough yet with production to kind of like see that project through. But I spent the next 10 years doing acting and music, and it was sort of like I'd do acting for a little while. It was like riding waves, and then like music would take over for a while, and then acting, and then music, and did kind of all the things and more that you talked about in the introduction. But during this whole time, I was always in toxic relationships. I never felt good enough. I isolated a lot. I had terrible depression. I would try to just sleep for days. I abused drugs and alcohol. And some of this behavior, had been going on in college as well. There were times when I would have to drop classes because I just couldn't function. And yet I was able to sort of maintain this high level of achievement on the outside. So I was sort of secretly suffering, and just kind of trying to contain that aspect of my life, that darkness, because I really felt like if anybody knew sort of how messed up I was, that I would just be totally unacceptable. So it was a very painful state to be in. And it was very challenging because I would have times when I functioned well and I'd succeed and accomplish things, but then like the bottom would fall out and things were just never really sustainable or consistent. And then obviously just the pain of going through that kind of mental and emotional suffering and feeling suicidal, feeling like I wanted to die, cutting, hurting myself. Just that level of intensity was excruciating. So I really have a lot of compassion for other people who are experiencing that because I went through it. And so that's one thing that I feel is really a great gift now, is that I'm able to hold space for people who have a lot of darkness and are afraid to share it, because there's not a lot that somebody could tell me that would really faze me. So anyway, in 2010, I had probably about 5 suicide attempts. And in 2010, I had my most serious one. I was hospitalized for a month. It was also my last one. And I did like an outpatient program, but instead of like really committing to recovery, I came back to Los Angeles and just went headlong into using cocaine all day, every day for the next 3 years. My solution was, I'm just not going to feel anything. And in a way that worked. It like numbed out the feelings. I wasn't as reactive. So I wasn't like causing drama and chaos, but I was just like staying in my apartment by myself, making music. And so, yeah, it was just sort of this like numb period where I kind of put my life on pause, but I saw that starting to destroy me and my health. And in 2013, I moved to Nashville, kind of did what in 12-step culture they call doing a geographic. So I went to Nashville. I was able to stop doing cocaine, but I kept like smoking, drinking, hating myself. And in 2014, I moved back to Los Angeles with my then fiance, now husband, and really started my sobriety journey. So I was sober for about 14 months. And then I went back to drinking like white wine and eating popcorn and like watching TV, and then like not wanting to work out the next day and just kind of feeling low level miserable. And after having experienced what it felt like to be clean, it wasn't very interesting to feel that way anymore. During that year, I also used a lot of ketamine, which was an interesting experience. I feel like I was sort of processing a lot of subconscious trauma through using that drug, but at a certain point, it wasn't really serving me anymore, and I was ready to be done. So I went to Burning Man in 2016, and I really felt called to do Kundalini yoga teacher training. I'll get into a little bit more about like some of the synchronicity and the fun story about Kundalini later. But I felt called to do Kundalini teacher training. I knew I needed to get sober before I could commit to that level of practice, because there's a lot that's involved in it. And so in 2017, I got sober again. I did my Kundalini yoga teacher training in 2018. I also had a completely healthy pregnancy. I wasn't dramatic or chaotic. I wasn't abusing drugs. I was able to be healthy, exercise, eat well, did my Kundalini yoga teacher training. And then in 2019, I launched my health coaching program, and I'm working with clients. And it's just been really fun to see how everything has evolved and kind of this upward spiral, things circling back. And so, yeah, it's just been an amazing ride. And I'm grateful now to be in a place where I can support others.
Wow. I was like on the edge of my seat for that whole story. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it really seems like it has been like quite a journey for you. You know, and something that I just kept thinking while you were sharing that is, and you touched on it, is that a lot of us are here, a lot of us who are awakened or conscious or living consciously, however you want to say it. It seems that a lot of us really have to go through what we're here to teach, right? I mean, Brandon always says that, like you, what does he say? You learn teach best what you need to learn, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like part of that, right? But it's really so interesting that like all of us who come to like the other side of this awakening, right? It's like before that is this really dark thing we're going through, and it seems like a really tough time. And then when you get to the other side, you're like, oh, this is what I'm supposed to help everyone with. So do you think that is a prerequisite for being a healer or a teacher or a coach, you know, in this reality, in this time, like to go through that on your own?
You know, I'm not totally sure. I think my instinct or my intuition would be to say probably. I know it was my experience, but I can't really speak to what other people's experiences need to be. I'm more just kind of at this point here to like witness and support whatever their experience or their process is, and not to try to define it or have any sort of say about which way it's supposed to go. But I think that's been what I have noticed in a lot of people who are healers and teachers. And I think it gives you a lot of insight and perspective, but it's not an easy thing to go through. I think also that like we teach best what we know, like what we have experienced versus like what we intellectually maybe learn. So yeah, I mean, I think it's definitely probable.
Yeah. And what would you say to anyone now who's listening and may still be struggling with maybe some sort of addiction or self-harm or anything like that? You know, what is something that, do you have any insight for them or anything to offer?
Definitely. Yeah. One of the major things is that you don't have to believe your thoughts. You know, practicing meditation can help with this a lot because you can develop a sense of healthy detachment. And so what happened for me was I was in that outpatient program after that worst suicide attempt in 2010. And I think it was just like one of the nurses or one of the counselors mentioned to me that like, you don't have to believe your thoughts. Just because you have suicidal thoughts doesn't mean you need to believe them, let alone act on them. That you can witness them, but not react. And it may still be painful to have the thoughts, but just knowing that the thought doesn't mean that you're supposed to carry it out is really liberating. So I think that's a really big one, especially for people who are in that very dark place and are struggling with that. Everybody has that negative, self-destructive voice. And like I said, developing this sense of detachment so that you can notice it and say like, okay, I hear you, but I'm going to make this choice instead. And that takes a lot of practice. And it's great to have support when you're doing that as well, because we can't really see our blind spots. And, when we get desperate, just being able to reach out to somebody else and kind of disperse some of that energy can help us keep from reacting on it. So there's that. And then another thing is actually something I heard on the podcast at the very beginning. And I'm not sure who said this, so I wish I knew who to give credit to, but there was somebody who said, what would someone who loves herself do? And so I really come back to that, and I share it with my coaching clients now as well. Just that every moment is an opportunity to make a different choice. You can move toward harm or you can move toward healing. Every moment is a new opportunity to begin again, to make a different choice. So it's never too late. And it's really just about like pausing, forgiving yourself, recommitting. And that's the journey. You fall off the wagon, you get on the wagon. You fall off, you get on. And it's really not about how many times you fall off. Focusing on that just keeps you stuck. It's about just how many times can you get back up. And reaching out to other people and having that support again is really helpful. It's a really great reminder sort of what's going on. And I'll finish up with this. It's kind of a little bit of a tangent or a detour. But I think one of the prep questions you asked me was sort of like, what effect has the podcast had on your life? And one of the things that it did for me was really help me realize that there's this huge community of consciousness change makers out there working to make the world more sustainable, more loving, and to feel a part of that community and aware of like what's going on and all the information and communication. So I just think staying plugged in and staying connected can do a lot to keep your vibe high.
I hear that completely. I was, and so beautifully said. Thank you. But just on that last note, I was just talking to someone about this, about, the power of community. You said you went to Burning Man. I've been to Burning Man the past 3 years. And something that I always take away from that is I truly think that the reason it makes me so happy is because I'm in community for that, for a week straight, right? Like, and there's no cell phone, so we're not distracted and we don't have an excuse not to be in community. Like, if you want to connect, like, you got to be there. And I keep getting this image in my head all the time when I think about it. It's like, if we can get back into communities, if we can somehow like start morphing our lifestyles back so that we're in some sort of community in our regular everyday life, I feel like people will be less likely to turn to drugs. I feel like people will be less likely to self-harm or do whatever these things are, because those are outlets for like pain, right? Those are outlets for like you feel isolated or separated. And I feel like when you're in community, you feel seen, you feel heard. And it's not to say that everything would be perfect, but I really do feel like this is like a huge piece to our healing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. Have you heard of the Rat Park addiction studies?
No. Do tell.
So, yeah, it's a little bit controversial. Some people, they would argue that maybe the summary or the takeaway is not perhaps what the researchers say it is, but I thought it was pretty compelling. Basically, they put a rat in a cage and they give the rat like cocaine or heroin, and the rat will like use the drug until it dies. Well, there was a researcher who noticed that they always just put the rat in a cage with the drug and nothing else. So the rat really has nothing else to turn to, no other choice. And so he was like, what would happen if I put a rat in basically like rat heaven? He called it Rat Park, where there's tons of toys, there's like other rats to mate with. It's basically just like the best reality a rat could hope for. And so he put the rats in this environment and offered them the drugs, and the rats didn't turn to the drugged water. They might like try it, but they didn't get addicted and like kill themselves using it. Wow. So the takeaway was that community really does have a profound impact, and that isolation and a lack of social support and connection can have profound effects on, how we try to cope. And then there's also with the blue zones. Have you heard of blue zones?
No.
The blue zones are areas in the world where people have the longest longevity. So like Okinawa, Japan is one of them. There's another one on the Mediterranean. I think it's part of Italy or Greece. There's actually like a Seventh-day Adventist community in California. These people live to be over 100 years old. And one of the things that they have in common is community and being socially involved. And so there's just a lot of research and information out there that really supports that community is really important. And then you look at our culture today and, the isolation and the technology and just everything that's going on. And there's a lot that seems very broken. I think 1 in 5 people has a mental health issue. 1 in 10 American women are on antidepressants. And I'm not against antidepressants or medication. I've been on them and used them in the past, but I just think that speaks to, that maybe something is kind of fundamentally broken in our culture. And I think that there are a lot of people out there now that we are working to shift that and change that. And I'm excited about that.
Totally. All of that is so fascinating. I love hearing that study. That makes so much sense and resonates with me. And something just to add on a little bit to the community piece, something that I keep thinking about specifically is like old people or like the elderly population, how in other cultures, right, like in villages, it's like when people get, when their elders are respected, they're not like, okay, you're too old, get out of this village. It's like, no, like you help take care of the children, like you help, they are respected for their wisdom about how to do things. Right. And in our culture, it's like you pass a certain age and you have some sort of illness or some sort of broken hip or you need more attention than we can give you. Like you're out, goodbye. And I think this is like it's just another symbol of like this fracture of society. It's like, well, once you pass a certain age, like there's no community to be a part of anymore. And it's like people lose their purpose, or they feel like they have no more purpose anymore and they're just meant to go sit in a home somewhere, And so, I love hearing about those studies. And I really do think community is huge. And I think it's so cool, thanks for like illuminating this community, because it is really cool to be a part of something where, you can actually witness that everybody is really working on themselves. Everybody's really aware of what's going on and working on themselves to be better and to help those around them, like you are. So.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, one thing I would love to share as well is that I've recently taught Kundalini at the Mystic Manor a couple of times to the retreat guests.
Yeah.
Yeah. So getting involved in that community, it's really nice, to be in Los Angeles and be present with everybody.
I'll be there in December.
Oh, awesome. So hopefully I'll get to meet you in person.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. I've been teaching there, and the last time I was there and I saw Brandon, we were talking and I was like, have you ever really had anybody talk very much about Kundalini on the podcast? And he was like, I don't know that I really have. It's been mentioned here and there. And I was like, well, I think it would be some valuable information to share. So that was kind of what inspired this episode to happen.
Oh, awesome. Oh, yeah. Because Brandon connected us like while he was with you, right? Yeah. Well, actually, do you want to talk a little bit about Kundalini now?
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, totally. Cool. And I'll even get into, I have like a whole bunch of stories of synchronicity and stuff. So I'll just try to fit in as many as I can. But
great.
The one that I'm going to talk about now is pretty fun because it relates to my Kundalini journey. So I'll tie that in. And then I'll just also talk about sort of what Kundalini is and the benefits. Yeah. So I would say that some of the things that were most influential in my recovery. And I just want to put in sort of like a little caveat here. Like recovery is not perfection. It's not like I'm 100% perfect and I never struggle anymore. That's not realistic. It's that the degree of what I go through is far, far less. My husband and I had like a small argument on Saturday, and in the past that would have resulted in me like being in bed for weeks, like depressed, just flaking out on everything. By yesterday, we were totally back on track. And this is to his credit as well, not just, me, but totally back on track and had an amazing and beautiful day at the pumpkin patch with our son. So I just want to point out that recovery doesn't have to look like all your problems are fixed. It can look like progress. So Kundalini and sobriety were probably two of the biggest things that really impacted my recovery. I think it would be difficult for me to get the benefits of Kundalini if I weren't also sober to the full extent that's possible. One of the good things, though, is that even if you are struggling with substances or addictive behaviors, if you start practicing Kundalini, those things often just sort of naturally fall away. So what Kundalini is an ancient technology for working on the nervous and endocrine systems. So the nervous system is our electrical system. It's the brain, the spinal cord, all of the nerves. And the endocrine system is our chemical messenger system. So this is neuropeptides, hormones, all of the chemical messages. And both things are important. It's how our body communicates with itself. It's, when we have a thought, we release neurotransmitters, and then the neurons start firing electrical activity. So these systems work in tandem with each other. And Kundalini uses angles and triangles, various postures, these positions that we put the body in that work on these systems. So it works on the heart center. We can get, sort of woo-woo and talk about the chakras. And we're moving the energy from the base of the spine where the Kundalini energy resides. It's our primitive survival energy. We're moving it up through the chakra system to the third eye point. And in doing this, we're sort of raising our vibration, and we are becoming more intuitive, more perceptive. And that's kind of what that third eye is associated with. So that's kind of the woo-woo side of it and how it's working on an energetic basis. But on the neuroscience basis, and this was kind of fun because I'll talk a little bit about the people that got me involved in Kundalini, but my teacher had a biology major in college, so he really talked about the science a lot, and that appealed to me. So I try to share that as well, especially with like my neuroscience background. So in the brain, we have these two glands, the pituitary gland and the pineal gland. And the pituitary gland is the master gland of the body. So this is actually where the nervous system and the endocrine system sort of link up. It's the intersection point. The pituitary gland and the pineal gland are associated with the third eye point, the chakra system. So you can really speak about the effects and sort of the mechanics of Kundalini from a biological sort of neuroscience perspective, talking about the glands, talking about the organs involved, or you can talk about it from an energetic perspective, the chakras and all of that. So that's kind of how Kundalini works. And it helps us like release trauma and process subconscious blocks, things that we've held on to in our body and our systems. Sometimes when you practice Kundalini, there's a lot of breath work as well. The breath carries prana, which is our life force. So the more prana, the more life force we bring into our body, the more sort of adaptation energy we have, the more we're able to meet the demands coming at us and be conscious and responsive as opposed to just sort of knee-jerk reactive. So that's kind of all of that, but sometimes you'll shake when you're practicing Kundalini, and that's sort of that past trauma and stuff leaving your body. There's the fight, flight, or freeze mechanism that we talk about a lot with nervous system arousal. Most of us are kind of in that fight or flight state all the time, just traffic and stress. And Kundalini is actually it's meant to help us deal with that. Yogi Bhajan, who brought Kundalini to the West, said that in this age of information and technology and information overload, that everybody would be stressed out and crazy. And if you didn't have a practice to ground you and help you cope, then you'd be stressed out and crazy. So that's kind of what Kundalini provides. And yeah, and so then, let me see, I kind of want to fit everything in about it. But with that fight, flight, or freeze state, when an animal experiences stress, especially if they freeze, what will happen after the stressor or the threat is gone, the animal will shake and release that stress and then go on, and they don't carry it in their body. We often are sort of like, we lock it in and we're trapped with that stress and we never process it. So having a practice where we can allow our body and our minds to release and kind of get free of that stuff, just it lights us up and frees us up in so many ways. We'll experience more synchronicity, just more stability, more ability to be compassionate and present. So it's done all of those things and more in my life. And then what I'd like to share now to kind of wrap up on the Kundalini note, and obviously if you have questions, we can go into more details, but is the synchronicity story. So the way I got into Kundalini is pretty interesting. In 2008, when I moved to Los Angeles, I learned Vedic meditation from a teacher named Tom Knowles. And I was friends with all these people that were becoming Vedic meditation teachers and like going to India and getting trained. And it was just strange because I never really felt called to do that. And I was like friends with all the people who were. And so it was just sort of interesting to me. And I never really like sweated it, but it just wasn't really my path. So then Tom Knowles used to do these knowledge meetings. I guess he's doing them again now. But he did these knowledge meetings where he'd come and speak and lecture. And there was this place called Indigo Lab in Los Angeles, and he was speaking. And I was at one of the lectures, and I met this man named Steven. And when Steven and I met, we just had one of those moments of like recognition where you look at each other, and his eyes were like so blue and just like blew me away. And I was like, wow, hi, who are you? And he's like, wow, hi, who are you? And we just had this connection and like instantaneous friendship that began. And so then when I was doing, in 2012, like when I was starting to work toward getting sober and whatever, I happened to run into Russell Brand. And Russell Brand was doing this thing. He was touching his thumbs to his fingertips sequentially. So thumb to index, thumb to middle finger, thumb to ring finger, thumb to pinky. And he was doing it rapidly. And I was like watching him do this. And I was like, what is he doing? And so I went up and asked him. And he just gave me this like massive download that like I didn't even understand at the time, which is really funny. So it was one of those things where like he told me some stuff that made sense later. Yeah. So he told me, Sa is infinity, cosmos, beginning. Ta is life, existence. Na, death, change, transformation, ma, rebirth. And I was like, what? And I don't know if you've ever heard Russell Brand
Yes,
speak,
that's a good Russell Brand impression.
Yeah, very, very eloquent, very articulate, very rapid. And so he just kind of like gave me this massive download, very intense. And I was like left with my head spinning. So I had never heard of Kundalini, didn't know what it was, didn't even know what he told me was related to Kundalini. And then in 2014-ish, Steven started teaching Kundalini at Indigo Lab, where I had met him when we were at that lecture together. So it's interesting because there's like certain places, like geographic locations that are vortexes or whatever, vortices. Totally. And so he starts teaching Kundalini there. He invites me. I start coming. I start practicing Kundalini. This is like in the middle of my recovery journey of like being sober, releasing a lot of trauma, a lot of shaking, a lot of like even like yelling and crying and just getting that stuff out. And then in 2018, I'd done a lot, went to Burning Man, knew I wanted to do Kundalini teacher training, got sober again. And in 2018, I did my Kundalini yoga teacher training. Well, guess who I happened to run into during my Kundalini yoga teacher training? Russell Brand. Yep. And I tell him, guess what? Do you remember you told me Sata Nama and you were doing that thing with your fingers? Well, it turns out once I started practicing Kundalini and doing my training and everything, that's Kirtan Kriya, which is a meditation in Kundalini that I'm now very familiar with and do all the time. And so I got to tell him, like, I'm now doing Kundalini yoga teacher training. And now, and I did Kundalini yoga teacher training at a place called Wanderlust in Hollywood. Yeah. And now Russell Brand is doing like speaking events at Wanderlust in Hollywood. So it's just so fun. Yeah, just how all these things, like there's circles and paths intersecting and kind of coming back around. And it's really been the same thing with Brandon and like the Positive Head community. Nixie Marie and I are good friends. We met at Burning Man in 2014. I actually did the music for her podcast. And awesome. It was so much fun. And she turned me on to the Positive Head podcast at the very beginning. So I knew Brandon and like Dalian and I corresponded. They played one of my songs on one of the early episodes. And then like Brandon and my husband and I have like been at a party together in Los Angeles. I went to Sonia Sophia's tapping thing at Red Lightning at Burning Man in 2016 with my husband. So yeah, it's just all these people crossing paths, circling, and it's so much fun to even just like run into people and be like, oh, it's you. So it's pretty cool.
Oh, I love that. I love that story, especially, I mean, one, because Russell Brand, so interesting human, and that's awesome. Mm-hmm. But two, I really love that, you know, it's so interesting to be aware of, like, to look back on the time when you were just like, what? Like so unable to really like, make sense of information that you were probably looking for. You just like weren't ready to digest it in that way yet. And it's so cool, I think, to like look back on moments, because I remember moments like that too, that I'm just like, and see where you are now. And, you know, it's just such like a marker of time and your transformation. So
yeah, there's one more little tiny component to that story, which is at the beginning I mentioned, like, I never became a Vedic meditation teacher, even though all my friends did. Well, I learned Vedic meditation in 2008. In 2018, 10 years later, I became a Kundalini yoga instructor. And I was like, oh, that's because my path was to do Kundalini. But I found Kundalini because of Vedic meditation, because of Stephen. So it was just really interesting, even like the timelines, and like that it was exactly 10 years, and just such a cool thing to kind of be aware of all that stuff. Yeah.
Oh, I love that too. I had that happen recently too, where like, certain paths, like certain, you know, it's like path of least resistance, right? And so like certain things draw you into where you're supposed to be, but it's like you think you're going to do one thing and then it pulls you into, you know, where you're really meant to be. I love that. God, the universe is so cool. It's so cool. So cool to look at all these connections. And I was going to ask you how you found out about Positive Head. So Nixie Marie, that makes sense. Love her. Actually, yeah, Nixie does so many things, doesn't she? She's like, yeah. She has so
like me.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. Juggling a lot of things. It's great. So let me ask you, what's one thing that you would tell any other like Positive Head listener right now, something that you think is really important for them to know as they continue on their own journey?
I would say what's kind of just like coming up very strongly is like trusting yourself and trusting your own judgment. I feel like what happened to me, I went through a lot of difficult experiences as a teenager, and I felt like my confidence was really undermined. And so I was sort of believing I was crazy, and that's what made me crazy. That's a loaded term. But that's what I think sort of the fundamental flaw was. And just being restored to believing that like, there's nothing wrong with me. I am acceptable and lovable as I am. I can trust my judgment. I can make good decisions. That was enough for me to sort of be in my power again. I think the dysfunction is when we don't trust ourselves, we don't have access to our power. We give it away. I would just really tell people to trust yourself, and also the difference between the voices, because everybody I talk to in my coaching has that negative critical voice in their head. And so one of the questions that often comes up is like, how do I tell the difference? Like if my thoughts are telling me that I'm horrible and I should, not call my friend back because they probably don't want to hear from me anyway. Like, how do I know what to believe? If I trust my judgment and my judgment is telling me that, then what am I supposed to believe? So that's where you've kind of got to get like the sense of detachment from that voice and tune in to the deeper voice, the higher self, the heart. And so I think a good way to do that is, again, that like, what would someone who loves himself do? Move toward the bliss, move toward the charm, move toward what makes things better. And if you can't find anything that will make things better, at least move toward what will do no more harm or will not make things worse. So, when people are like, I can't think of anything that would be fun or that I like or that I want to do, I'm like, okay, well, what's the thing that sounds like the least unappealing? Do that. The thing that you would hate the least, okay, go do that. So I really think that being able to tune into that loving space of like, I deserve to receive love and goodness and to do what makes me feel good, or at least doesn't make me feel worse. I think that's a really good place to start in terms of just navigating your day-to-day life and making choices.
Such good advice. Such powerful advice. I think it's also like simpler. Well, it's simple and it's complex, but it's simpler in one way than we think, right? We think like, I need to do all these things to make these huge changes. And really it could be as simple as like changing that one belief that keeps running over and over again in your head of like, I am worthy of this, or I deserve this, or I can trust myself. Like I trust myself. Right.
Totally.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Very powerful advice for sure. And if people want to coach with you, like, can you talk a little bit about your coaching?
Yeah, I would love to. So I launched a program called Transcend the Turbulence this year. And it's been so amazing to get to work with clients and just witness and support their process. It's been actually really almost comforting or something for me. It's not about me and what I'm getting from it, but the reason I'm sharing this is because I think it's good for other people to know as well. I now get to have like a unique perspective, a unique insight into the private things that people experience, and to be able to normalize that and share with people that like everybody has that critical voice. Everybody struggles with feeling not good enough. Everybody struggles with these things. And to really see that it makes it like there's nothing to be ashamed about. There's nothing to be ashamed about. And I know it can be so scary to challenge that fear and that shame and to reach through it, to grab the hand that's waiting for you. But that's what's required in order to heal. People can reach for you, but if you're not reaching back, then, it won't work. So it's just getting up that courage. And I understand how painful and scary that can be. I mean, there was a point in my life where I felt like I would rather die, or I was supposed to die, rather than, reach out and share with anybody what I was actually going through. So that's what I hope to offer for people, is that safety, that support. There's two things I think that people really can benefit from when they're working to recover from depression, anxiety, or just get through the darkness to reach a more functional, more happy, more fulfilled place in their lives. And that is structure or strategy, sort of interchangeable, a little bit different, but those two things, structure and strategy, and then support. So that's what I feel like I offer with my coaching program. There is a plan, it's all mapped out. And there's structure that you can kind of use to anchor yourself, ground yourself, to be kind of just put one foot in front of the other. Because sometimes it can be really overwhelming to try to figure out what to do when, like I heard, I think it was on a podcast or something, I heard somebody talking about, I think they had a concussion, and they were talking about being responsible for getting treatment and like healing themselves when their brain was broken, and how challenging and difficult that is. So if you can just have some structure and some strategy laid out for you, and you can just put one foot in front of the other and not have to like do all the research and figure everything out when you're already in a difficult place, I think that's really valuable. And then also just having the support. We talked about Rat Park. We talked about the Blue Zones, and support is huge. It's the accountability and all of that. So I do, I can do unstructured coaching as well without the program, but the program is what I'm most excited about right now. And so I just wanted to invite anybody that's interested. I am offering a free coaching call, so a free half-hour coaching call. If you email Positive Head in the subject line to Ashley@ashleymiershealth.com, it's ASHLEY at Ashley Miers Health, ASHLEY MIERS Health, HEALTH.com. I will do the free coaching call with you, and I'll also offer an 11% discount on any services if you decide that you'd like to work with me. So that's what I'm offering. And then I also wanted to share, we're not really getting into like the acting and music stuff very much, because my focus right now is on how I can help other people. But, if you listen to my music, or if you're touched by this podcast, or just want to connect with me at all, please also feel free to email me at that email address. We can talk about anything and everything that we touched on here. Let me know if this resonated with you. I just welcome communication and connection with this community, and would love to hear from people and develop new relationships. So I'm happy to help when and where I can, and also happy to just connect and start conversations. So again, Ashley@ashleymiershealth.com, and that's my offer. Yeah.
Thank you so much. That's such a kind offer for the listeners. And we'll put your email in the show notes along with all the other links to your stuff. So if you're listening to this, you can look in the show notes, and you should be able to find the contact info. This has been awesome. Thank you so much for sharing everything with us, sharing all of your wisdom. And if you're listening and you feel, Ashley resonates with you, which I'm sure is happening with a lot of you, then definitely reach out. I can speak for coaching as well. I also am a coach and I also have coaches, and coaching is just one of these things that is just like invaluable. Like I can't even, my whole life is transformed within the past year, and I truly couldn't have done it without bringing coaches into my life. It really is, you know, it's just, we need accountability. We need to be seen. We need to be heard. We need all these things that coaching provides. And so I think I just think coaching is amazing. So that is my that is my support for Ashley's coaching. Ashley, is there anything else you want to share before we sign off?
Yeah, a couple things. I'd love to just share a couple quick other little stories of synchronicity.
Yes.
So much fun.
Yes.
And then also, we're going to play one of my songs at the end of the episode. So I just wanted to sneak in a little bit of information on music. So it was difficult for me to decide which song to share. And I wanted to tell people, if you like my music or you're interested in exploring it, I totally recommend Lunar Eyes and Priestess. Those were my other two choices. They're great productions, great producers, fun lyrics, kind of edgy and fun listens. But the song that I chose today is called Live Out Loud. And I just feel like it really speaks to the ascension and like where we're at, and can offer hope and inspiration. So like one of the lyrics in that song is, dawn is breaking, the whole world is waking, it's time to rise, open your eyes. And so that's really like the message I wanted to share, of like light and uplifting and positivity and encouragement, and that you can get to the other side. So that song is for everybody who needs a little boost, a little magic to help them connect with that energy. So that'll be at the end, but now into the stories of synchronicity. All right. So there's a few. One that's really fun that happened recently. I've just really been working on developing my intuition, my sort of psychic abilities. And so I practice smiling, like when I'm running or I'm driving. If I catch myself like serious with my face scrunched up in thought, and I make myself smile. So I was running and I was smiling the whole time I was running. Like, I love this run. Yes, I do. And as I was ending my run, I was running up a set of stairs in my neighborhood, and I get to like the middle of the staircase, and there's sort of like a little platform, a little plateau in the stairs, and somebody had written in sidewalk chalk, "Remember to smile." So just fun little things like that, where the universe or my higher self kind of plays with me. There's another kind of far out fun one. I feel like one of my guides is Archangel Michael, which is kind of funny because I'm not Christian. I wasn't raised with Christianity. I wasn't really raised with any religion. I just kind of got to explore and figure out what fit for me. And so when I was 18, I had this extremely vivid dream where there was this beautiful man just like hovering in front of my face. And he had like these electric blue eyes and like this blonde hair. And he was just like a god, just like, oh my gosh. And in the dream, I just wanted to like connect with him. And I like reached out and tried to like kiss him, and he just like dissolved. It was like I wasn't allowed to connect in that way with him. And I woke up from that dream and I just had this knowing. I was like, that was Archangel Michael. And that was really weird because I wasn't Christian and didn't even know who Archangel Michael was. Yeah. It was just like, I'd probably heard that, like, I knew that there were archangels, but like, it was just weird. And I was kind of like obsessed with the color blue, which is his color, for a while. And so then in 2013, when I was living in Nashville, I had this really far out experience where I felt like I was being haunted. I was having like these nightmares with like sleep paralysis. And I'd always been very hesitant to like reach out to psychics, but it got so bad that that I finally did. I reached out to this psychic that somebody had recommended to me, and she did a session with me and helped me clear that energy. And in the session, she told me that like Archangel Michael was present. And I was like, oh, that's funny because I had this dream like 10 years ago or however many years ago. And she goes, have you ever looked up what Archangel Michael looks like? And I was like, no, that had never occurred to me. She's like, why don't you Google it? So I Google it, and the images, the drawings and paintings and stuff that came up were exactly what I had seen in my dream. Wow. So that's a pretty fun one. And then the last thing I'll talk about is, and this could probably be like a whole other podcast almost, but I have this really amazing connection with the Red Hot Chili Peppers.
Love them.
Yeah, they're like my favorite band and always have been. So their music is like the soundtrack to my life. And one of the things I'll say about music is that it's like channeling for me. Songwriting is like my higher self coming through, sending me messages, and I can hear messages in music. So somebody recently told me, actually, and this might be fun for listeners to experiment with as well, that you can ask questions and listen for the answers in the music, that it doesn't have to be a one-way street, that you can actually ask and get guidance. So the Red Hot Chili Peppers, there've just been, I mean, so many examples of this, but I actually met them and got to go backstage at concerts when I was like 19. And so there's like a whole fun story around that. But I was driving with my husband. We were on a road trip. We were in Big Sur, and I'm like, I'm going to put on some Red Hot Chili Peppers. So I put on Road Trippin'. And I didn't know this prior to putting on the song, but one of the lyrics in that song while I'm listening, driving through Big Sur is, in Big Sur, we take some time to linger on. And I was like, oh, we're in Big Sur right now. Okay. And then in 2016, when we went to Burning Man, the Red Hot Chili Peppers had just released a new album, and there was a song called Go Robot. Have you heard that song?
I don't think so.
It's a fun song. And one of the lyrics in that song is, you will find your flow when you go robot. And so in 2016 at Burning Man, have you heard of Robot Heart?
Yes, of course.
Okay. So at 2016 in Burning Man, I happened to have a robot costume that I had just like had fun putting stuff together, and this robot costume had come together. And then I had this whole big experience making friends with the Robot Heart people, dancing in the Robot Heart, where like people love to dance. It's awesome. So I just had this really fun experience, and like the robot theme and all this stuff. And so that lyric, like, you will find your flow when you go robot. So it's just things like that happen constantly, where like the lyrics are speaking to me and I hear messages in them. And it's been so fun. And then obviously getting to meet them, and like, that was really cool. And I'll just kind of end on this, that, like I said, I went through a lot of difficult experiences as a teenager. When I was like 4 years old, I would watch MTV instead of Nickelodeon when my grandma would leave the room. And I'd see these Red Hot Chili Peppers videos, and I was always just fascinated and just like compelled. And I was too young to like really understand bands, or that you could be a fan or follow them. I just was like, every time I'd see Anthony Kiedis on the screen, I'd be like enamored and just glued to it. When I was 15, I was like skateboarding in the driveway. My brother was working on his car, and Scar Tissue came on. And I was like, what is this? I love this. He's like, this is the Red Hot Chili Peppers. So I realized that it was the same band I had been so infatuated with as a 4-year-old. And then I wrote this letter of admiration to the fan club. And Anthony Kiedis' dad, Blackie, was running the fan club at the time. And out of the thousands of people that were sending stuff in and whatever, he singled me out. We started corresponding via email. He taught me about like Aldous Huxley and all this stuff. He came to Denver where I was in college. I got to meet Anthony, like go out to dinner with him and his dad, go backstage to concerts. And so all of this being said, that it cemented in me this belief that like anything is possible. When I was a little kid in Nebraska watching TV, like seeing the Red Hot Chili Peppers on the screen was another planet. And so connecting with them felt like reaching through that screen and accessing that world, and knowing that I was capable of that, of like crossing, light years of time and space to connect with the people that I resonated with, just cemented this belief in me that I hope everybody has an opportunity in some way in their life to tap into something like that, and to believe that like we truly can create whatever we dream or imagine, that it is possible, and that the people are out there, and that the people that you feel in resonance with, like they're waiting for you too. So all that being said, and then with the coaching, don't be afraid to reach out. And if you are, do it anyway. And I hope to hear from you. And I'm so excited that I got to talk with you today, Alexa. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ashley. This has been such a pleasure. Such a pleasure. You're such a light. And it was an honor for me as well. Thank you. And once again, we'll have all of Ashley's info in the show notes. So check it out. And until next time, bye.
Bye.
And if you're feeling the call to come for a week retreat style Mystic Manor immersion, remember to go now and book your time to speak with me directly about stepping into the optimistic vortex at calendly.com/talk with Brandon while there are still spots left. Otherwise, I look forward to co-creating magic with you at the Mystic Manor.
your dreams come true. I feel exceptional.